Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this very important hearing, and thank you to all the witnesses for a discussion that obviously affects virtually every American in one way or the other. As we've heard, the composition of the workforce has changed pretty dramatically over the past several decades. In my home state of Michigan, half the workforce, nearly half of the workforce are women in dual earner households. At the same time, in my home state, a share of the state's population over 65 will grow by nearly 40% in the next 15 years. So while families have to balance work, child care, elder care, the problem is only going to get worse unless we address it. The ability to take leave is increasingly important. The problem is some skeptics of paid family leave or flexible workforce policies claim that these practices are too costly. And it's just interesting that I don't believe that such an analysis fully contemplates the true cost of the current environment, the cost of decreased or worse health outcomes as a result of not having access to care, or the loss of a job as a result of an individual being forced to leave work in order to take care of a family member. There's an economic implication for that throughout the economy, the loss of productivity, but the social cost that is borne by somebody. We all pay, whether we want to admit it or not, whether we measure the cost or not, we all pay. The question is, are we going to pay in a fashion that provides policy that is consistent with our values? And that's what we're trying to get at today. I also will say that I don't think most of the businesses that I talk to when really contemplating this agree that this sort of policy would be harmful to them. And I'll give you an example. In my own home state, in my district, Goujon Brothers Incorporated in Bay City, Michigan, provides their employees with unlimited paid family and medical leave. According to their annual reports, which I've looked at, and I've visited this company, their employees take an average of 4 sick days a year. They're not abusing the system. They're using it when they need to. Their productivity is stronger as a result of these policies. Their employees stay with the company longer. They have an average of 20 years seniority in this company. Their only real turnover comes from people who retire. So I guess, Ms. Hamilton, in listening to your testimony, it sort of sounded pretty similar to what I've heard from this particular company in my district and others. But I'd like you to just mention a little bit, because there's been a focus on smaller businesses. We heard from my colleague, Mr. Wenstrup, about his experience. Could you just explain from your point of view how smaller businesses would benefit from this policy?
Sure. So I have a company, Badger, that I run that has 100 employees, but I also have a small restaurant that I own as well. And we have about 20 employees, only 7 full-time employees. And we're in the first year of business. And in the first few months of business, our main chef had to leave because of an illness. And as a small business that couldn't afford to have the kind of benefits that Badger had, we were stuck in a place where we had to both pay for his time and also hire a replacement, which was really damaging to the business in that early few months. And then later on in the year, my business partner had a baby, and so also took time, and my other business partner had a medical surgery. And so we're still in business, miraculously, in the first year. But if I think about the benefit of having had this type of insurance, that we could have had a small amount that we were paying just throughout for those 7 employees, that 3 of those 7 employees that went out in that first year, it would have been a much less of a burden for that small business. And for Badger, still being a small business with 100 employees, we do pay for medical leave, and it would be much easier for our budgeting process to be able to know what that is in advance, and rather than have it be unknown every year.
Thank you. And I wonder, Ms. London, if you might comment. You mentioned in your testimony the thousands of letters that you received back when people wrote letters, I suppose.
Yes.
It's all email or something else now. That's a pretty interesting focus group. I would suspect, and just maybe have you comment on this, whether the people who were feeling that stress were experiencing more stress in their life as a result of not being able to have access to medical leave, or less stress? And what do we know about the effect that stress has on health, on productivity, on other things that have an economic impact?
Well, from reading those letters, and now more recently from reading Facebook posts constantly and people just coming into me on my website, I mean, they're completely stressed out. Now, I must say, I'm also a small business owner, and I usually have anywhere from 2 to 3 at one time employees. And I feel so inadequate hearing what Badger is doing, but it's impractical. And I struggle with this all the time. I mean, I had an employee leave, and I was doing maternity leave pay, but I had to go and hire another person to replace her. And the economics, I can't just miraculously make what I'm earning go up to compensate for that. And I really contemplated whether I should even keep my production company open and working on projects like this. But they're meaningful to me, and I want to do something. I want to continue working and try to make a difference. But it's very, very difficult when you have a company as small as I do. So as I listened to all this, the idea of putting the onus on an employer, and I think there are many, many companies that are small like me, under 10, under 5 people. It's just, it's impractical to think that we can carry that burden. But I would be willing to pay as an employer, and I think my employees would too. Of course, they're all women. They're all young women, all having children. And if we had the option to do that so that I had the comfort in knowing that my employees were going to be taken care of, I would be ecstatic over that, because I always feel bad not being able to lay out the kinds of things that your company that has, I don't know, 100 employees can do. It's no can do when you have 2, 3, 4 employees.
Thank you so much. My time's expired. I thank the chairman for his indulgence.
Virginia, Mr. Byer to inquire.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and thank you so much